Well, what a month it's been for our next guest. Of course, he was calling the Olympic hockey tournaments for NBC and their associated networks. Once upon a time, he was the voice of the Baltimore Skipjacks. He is the great Kenny Albert, and he is back with us now here on GCR. Kenny, it's Glenn. Thank you for taking the time for us, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Glenn. Really appreciate it.
Kenny, you've done a whole lot in your career. I mean, literally wrote a book about everything that you've done in your career. Can you describe what the last few weeks have been like for you and where they rank amongst everything that you've done?
Well, it's sort of indescribable. I mean, at least the last 5 days in Milan with the
Yeah.
3 overtime games, the U.S.-Sweden game on the men's side that went to overtime, the women's gold medal game last Thursday, and then the men's gold medal game on Sunday. I've been really fortunate to be involved in 7 Winter Olympics, and I've worked gold medal games in the past, the women in 2002, and then both in 2018 and 22. But on the men's side, the NHL players weren't there the last 2 Olympics, so definitely a bit of a different feel. And the fact that the U.S. won both games, both U.S.-Canada matchups, it's kind of been overwhelming. The texts, the emails, the tweets that I've seen, the articles that have been written. And it's funny, I think because those 3 games that I mentioned went to overtime, people certainly react a little differently than if, let's say, the final score is 5-1. You don't necessarily have that last call, the overtime winner, the abrupt ending to the game. So I've been lucky enough, again, to work many big events through the years, whether the Stanley Cup final, football and baseball playoff games, some bowl games back in the day. But, this one certainly has to be right up there. This recent stretch in Milan, our TNT hockey crew had the Ovechkin record-breaking goal last April. I called the Bautista home run back in 2015. Those are 2 of the events that I get asked about the most, but I think that will change after the events in Milan over the last few weeks.
Might be the next book, in fact, if it works out.
A couple of people have mentioned that, so
Yeah,
I may
right.
have to start putting some ideas together.
Kenny, we obviously felt the tension watching at home, right? Like just every moment you bring up the overtime games and the women struggling to just get a goal and really just to get the puck down to the other side of the net so they could get the goalie off, right? Like we all felt every ounce of that. As a broadcaster, as someone who's been there a number of times, is there tension? Is it as simple as I'm just calling a game the same way that I would if it was a Rangers game in the middle of the season? Like, what is that feeling like when, for the rest of the world, the tension is gripping?
Yeah, it's a great question. On one hand, you're just calling the game, like we all have hundreds and thousands of times. All of the reps, starting with those Baltimore Skipjack games back in 1990. But it's obviously on a huge stage, whether it's the overtime against Sweden to stay alive, whether it's the gold medal game trailing 1-0 with just over 2 minutes left, whether it's the men's gold medal game, which is heading down the stretch towards overtime, a couple of power plays late in that game. So, you definitely feel the magnitude of it, but when you're in the moment, I'm calling the game. It's funny, I didn't really feel nervous or any extra pressure leading up to that game or during, but I just remember all of us being so ramped up. My color analysts, Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher, did an unbelievable job. Catherine Tappan with the interviews, Mike Tirico, who was the host. Everybody was at the top of their game, and you know how meaningful it is. You know how many millions of people are watching. But, like I said, on the other hand, you're calling the game, just like we all have over the last, 20, 30-plus years.
Kenny Albert is with us here on GCR after he called, obviously, the Olympic hockey tournaments for NBC. Kenny, I wonder, too, like, when you go through this, do you think ahead at all? Do you have that, hey, I need to nail this call if the U.S. wins the gold medal? Is it just whatever happens, just describe what happened? Like, do you think about all of that in preparing for a gold medal game?
You do think about it, and I've thought about it leading up to Stanley Cup games when one of the teams is in position to clinch. I'm not one that necessarily writes out, scripts out a couple of sentences or a paragraph. I think that's a little too forced at times.
Mm-hmm.
But you do want to have a couple of words and phrases in your mind. For example, when the Tampa Bay Lightning won in 2021, and I was calling it on NBC. I threw out some words and phrases earlier in the day, and it was their second consecutive cup.
Yep.
So I used, as the time was winding down, lightning strikes twice. The
Right.
Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup. Now, as far as the goal calls, when it goes to overtime,
Throw everything out.
you don't know what the situation is going to be.
Right.
Will it be a breakaway? Will it be a deflection? So you can't really script a goal call. But I did think about it, earlier in the day and in the days leading up to it. Again, I didn't want to script anything out, but I did feel like I needed, if the U.S. won, to include something about the Miracle team in 1980. The fact that it was the first in 46 years since then. So I called the goal, which, everybody has seen or heard. And then I paused and I referenced, Jack Hughes scoring the goal. I referenced the golden goal, since it was the goal that won the gold medal. Then I paused and I did say, and this was the part that I had thought about a little bit. I said, for the first time since the Miracle in 1980, the United States takes the gold.
Yeah.
So that part of it I thought about. It wasn't necessarily written down, but I just wanted to include. I felt it was important to include that in the call, referencing the Miracle on Ice team in 1980.
And
having
obviously,
been the last.
you nailed it. You nailed it. It was perfect. It was wonderful. I also wonder too, as like you guys are there with the team, and I thought it was really cool, like watching both the guys and girls interact with like Catherine, right? And like it felt like, in a way, you guys were kind of part of it, and referencing Eddie and his emotions that you could sense were very real. How much of that did you feel that, like, not to say that you were on the team. I understand it doesn't work that way, but how much did you feel that, like, it was important and what it meant to them, and that you all were telling this story and how important that was to them and all of their families?
Right, and here's the thing: if Canada won either of those games, we're still going to have an exciting call and give them,
Yep.
the absolute credit that would have been due. So as far as the broadcast, we're right down the middle, throughout the game, pointing out great things that are done by both teams. But as far as the question, yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, first of all, on the men's side, we're around these NHL players all the time, so we have a relationship, all of us, myself, Eddie, Boosh, Catherine, with a lot of the players on the team, the coaches. Mike Sullivan's the coach of the Rangers, so I'm around him all the time, during the NHL season. I know some of the players pretty well. And on the women's side, we did all the games, all 7. So we talked to the coach, John Wroblewski, before every game. We went to practices. So you get to know the players a little bit. But we worked all 7 of the women's games and then all 6 of the men's USA games. So we were around them pretty frequently, or, at least from afar, calling the games, and did have a chance to chat with many of them. As far as Eddie, and we talked about this throughout the Olympics, his feeling of pride, having represented the United States as a 17-year-old back in 1984, the first Olympics after the 1980 Miracle on Ice. And he was so emotional. I looked over at him after the goal was scored. He had tears in his eyes, and I know how much it meant to him. He talked about it on our games throughout the Olympics, the fact that Canada is the biggest rival in the minds of U.S. hockey players, and he was so proud to be in the building and be on the call when they finally got it done.
Can you wrap your head around what this means for the sport, what this means for hockey in our country? Like, have you had a second to think about it? Like, the love affair, obviously, that we continue to this day to have with the 1980 team, that's never gone away, but those guys weren't turning around and going back and playing, to the point 3 nights later, and you're calling a game on TNT. Have you been able to sort of wrap around like what these 2 weeks have meant for all of hockey moving forward?
Right. I mean, you're right. It was different in '80. A lot of those guys did join NHL teams, a week, 2 weeks after the Olympics, the teams that drafted them, but they weren't playing in the NHL before that, so it was a lot different. I was 12 years old in 1980, and I remember watching the game, and I was playing hockey, skating at a local rink prior to that, but I remember the boon in the numbers, after that Olympic experience for the United States. I think 3 or 4 times as many kids started showing up at the rink after that. So hopefully this has a similar effect. With social media and technology these days, back then the game was on delayed tape on a Friday night. It wasn't even shown live. But now I feel like it lives on, not only did people watch the game live on Sunday, but the highlights are everywhere.
Yep.
So hopefully, young boys and girls continue to watch the highlights of those games and see the interviews and some of the things the players are doing. And, hopefully it does lead to increased numbers as far as kids who play the game and watch the game. And, I know the NHL, their marketing slogan now is now we're all going for the silver, meaning the Stanley Cup. So we have the playoffs coming up, and hopefully it's a tremendous time for the sport of hockey.
All right, two quick ones because I know you got a million of these to do, Kenny. But one, look, the U.S. won. They played by the rules, and 3-on-3 is exciting as hell as far as hockey is concerned. But what's your official take on whether or not maybe in like a gold medal game it should be 5-on-5 for a little bit longer and try to get a winner that way?
In a perfect world, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe even 4-on-4, which is what it was in 2010 when Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal. I love the 3-on-3 overtime during the regular season of the NHL. It's exciting for the broadcasters, for the fans, but there's a reason why they don't do it in the playoffs. Now, I understand why they do it at the Olympics, because sometimes there are 4 games in a day, and you don't want them going on forever. So, that's for others to decide, but it certainly was exciting how it all played out, during the overtime games we've talked about in Milan.
And then where are you with, should Capitals fans be maybe, embracing this a little bit longer? What's your gut tell you about whether or not Alex Ovechkin's going to keep playing past this season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know he has intimated that he wants to play in Russia, finish the career, for a year in his home country at some point. It's just remarkable, what he's done not only throughout his career but these last couple of seasons at his age. And
yeah.
I was so fortunate to be there when he scored .895, and then we also had number 900 this year on TNT back in November. So, for the fans of the Capitals and the NHL, hopefully he sticks around for another year or two, but I guess only Alex and his inner circle would know the answer to that, but I certainly hope he does.
Kenny Albert, an amazing job you and the entire crew did. I mean, it was just, God, it was incredible. You nailed every ounce of it. Happy for you, and know we're going to be seeing a lot of you in the coming weeks and months as we move towards the playoffs on TNT. Always appreciate you taking time for us back here. Thanks so much for doing this, man.
Thanks, Glenn. Really appreciate it. And to the listeners who remember the days of the Skipjacks back in the early 1990s.
You're not going to sing the song, are you? You're not going to do it.
I'm not going to sing the song, but I send regards and such great memories. And that song did play 9 times in one period. I could say we because I was part of the team. We scored 9 goals. The Skipjacks scored 9 goals in the first period against Hershey. And it was like the song was on a loop for the entire first period.